A major area of focus is on the mining technique we'll use here, which is called panel caving, a subset of the mining method known as block caving. The animation which follows will show you how the whole process works. The ore body sits 7,000 feet beneath the desert floor and approximately 1 mile behind an escarpment or cliff known as Apache Leap. Here at the Resolution Mine, panel caving is the safest and most productive way to mine this deep, large, low-grade deposit. This will allow us to mine the most ore with the least amount of waste. The idea is very simple. It uses one of nature's strongest forces, gravity, to help extract the ore. In panel caving, we will actually mine from underneath the ore deposit. It's a 3-step approach. First, go deep into the earth, break up the rock containing the copper ore, then create hourglass-shaped caverns to funnel the rock downward, and finally, remove it from the bottom. The first phase of the operation is called the undercut. After initial tunnels are created at the bottom of the ore deposit, a series of W-shaped openings are drilled and blasted. As the rock is removed from the undercut, it creates a large void and gravity causes the roof of the opening to collapse. Once a large enough area has collapsed and been removed, the cave will then continue to naturally propagate or spread upwards into the copper ore. Now the ore is ready to be removed. So in the second phase, we go down below the undercut and create a set of horizontal tunnels from which the ore will be extracted. After tunnels are created, vertical holes are drilled from the top of the tunnel into the W-shaped openings. The tunnels are then blasted, which forms the funnel-shaped opening. In the final or production phase, gravity pulls the broken rock resting inside the funnel down through the opening. Automated loaders transfer the ore into trains and then dump the ore into crushers that further reduces the size of the ore fragments. Then the ore is hoisted and conveyed to the surface. Panel caving allows for the mining of very large ore bodies by dividing it into smaller strips or panels, so that the ore can be removed in a safer and more efficient manner. Once a panel is depleted, the next adjacent panel is mined. This cycle continues until all the ore is mined. Working more than 1.25 miles beneath the surface, each and every phase of the operation is carefully monitored. Just one example, engineers will constantly control the speed of the rock coming through the opening in the funnels by controlling how much is removed from each opening.
Goes through a series of crushing and conveying steps. So the next process is basically the sag mill. And we have machines here to simulate the sag milling. They basically go round and round in circles and grind up the material. They are heavy, yeah. So these are mill balls. These balls will go in and they will grind up the material, so either through abrasion with them on each other or with the dirt. So it takes it from slightly large to slightly smaller. Typically around about this size or smaller. From there it goes on to the flotation circuit. And with the flotation circuit, what we do is we add in some chemicals and reagents, and that allows the chemicals bind to the copper and makes it flow. So in the simulation you can see that the copper's material floats to the surface, and the rest of it sinks to the bottom.
Okay, thanks very much. So what happens with the waste?
So with the waste, which we call tailings, in the model it's basically going through these pipes over to one of the drums. In the mine itself, the waste will go, same thing, be pumped out and go to a tailings dam. And from the tailings dam, we'll decant back some of the water so we can reuse that.
And one of their other big draws, the Arizona Trail, is going to be sitting alongside a giant blowing dust pile.
It is this giant blowing pile of dust that has the residents of Queen Valley concerned. Rio Tinto plans to dump the 1.6 billion tons of waste from their project only 3 miles upwind and upstream from their community. So while the Apache fight for their sacred land on the east side of Superior, here on the west side, this community has come together to fight for their homes.
Queen Creek runs right through Queen Valley. Used to always run water.
That's what I heard. It was always filled, and now not. It's not.
Right, because Resolution Copper is pumping 1 million gallons a day down to Florence, right past Queen Valley.
And so the ecosystem along that river is going to be destroyed as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's not even counting the dust issues that we're going to have and the air pollution because of that tailing pile.
It is a desert. It blows.
When I asked Resolution about it, they talk about, well, we're going to keep the pile dampened down. Well, that sounds good to a lot of people in the audience, but all you got to do is figure it out. And if you put 1 cup on 1 square foot 1 time a day, it'll take 20 million gallons a day to do that. And they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And so here's an area that's part of Tonto National Forest. It belongs to all of us, that they're going to put a tailing pile, and when they leave, it's going to be the responsibility of Tonto National Forest.
In the sun, in the heat of the summer day, actually vaporizes the mercury in those tailings. It gets into the air and it is turned into methyl mercury, the most dangerous kind, and the concentrations actually blow off the tailings into the neighboring area.
So potential effects on water. I think we've talked about some of these already. They can affect you in a myriad of ways. You can have these storm events. We can have overtopping, flooding, other breachings to the tailings impoundments. We can get the runoff carrying the tailings into waterways. And this is the Mount Holly issue, and this happens and can happen often. Earthquakes and landslides and slips. That sounds really kind of weird, an earthquake, but we just had an earthquake, not a small one. Infrastructure failures. This is the pipes, pumping, all of these different things, impoundments, and the acid mine drainage and seepage. And that really concerns me for you guys and for the surrounding community, because there's not going to be a liner.
What can we do? I mean, what can I do? Because I can't speak for everybody, so.
You can't sit back and let these guys fight for you. Help these guys help you by educating yourselves.
Thank you.
The trails out here that they want to bury are some of the best in Arizona. We have people come from all over the country that come down here, and we think that's an abomination what they plan to try to do in putting this tailing pile in our backyard.
And what really concerns me is I've heard comments by people that have said, oh, this will take 40, 50 years for the tailings to really start to affect people. Even if it is that long, we have a responsibility to generations, to our children and our grandchildren, to not let this happen. We don't want to devastate the environment, and we have company.
So the local residents decided to track down Rio Tinto and have a little talk.
I didn't come up here. John, you get upset. I'm not. We're just talking, man. Why are you getting so upset in our face?
These are not going to leak and blow. We got to design them to where they don't do that, or at least we got to be able to control it.
You're putting a liner down then?
Well, we'll talk about that. On the liner on this side right now, the current design does not have one. But the reason why we don't have one right now is because if you look on surface, it's basically considered somewhat of an impermeable rock.
If you're on permeable rock, that means it's not going to leach in, it's going to surface run, correct? What are you going to do to control that?
Well, basically here you've got controlled drainages that go through an impermeable rock along a ridge line. So basically you've got a series of canyons of which we've got to basically create what we call an actual water dam to control that. So you've got to put in grout curtains and build up a dam downstream of the actual facility and basically control it from there. So all that seepage that would possibly escape through the embankment has to be collected and pumped back into the tailing spot.
And then you have a way to clean the water when it comes out through the bottom of the dam, or when you open the floodgates?
Well, that's where you have multiple levels of contingency. So you have dams built downstream of dams. Basically.
And all the heavy metals will settle in the bottom of those ponds.
No. Basically, that gets a bit complicated and stuff like that, but we do a flotation process where we separate out the sulfur and sulfides and metals.
And what do you do with them?
We store them within the facility, within the slime ponds. So basically, they're a long ways from the exterior of the embankment.
Where are the slime ponds come from?
Right in the center of the facility.
Of the mine, you mean?
Right where we're standing now.
This is it. This is where all the crud's going to be.
Yep.
No, it's ground sand. It's ground sand. It's 98% silver.
You know, resolution tells you that the tailings consist mostly of sand, which is true. It's mostly sand, but there are some very nasty metals in it. This will go into the aquifer and will be distributed through the rest of Arizona, actually. Long-term exposure to heavy metals, which accumulate in the body and do not leave you, are going to eventually cause trouble. Trouble like cancer. It's like taking a glass of water and putting a little cyanide pill in the water. It's mostly water.
Numbers thrown out there on how high it is. It doesn't get much higher than where you're standing.
If you get too high, you just might try to get you a piece of me.
Well, the numbers thrown out there happen to be their own, and it adds up roughly to the volume of this mountain.
And by their own admission and their own numbers, they are claiming that they're going to be the largest producing mining company for copper in North America. Well, you've got to look at both sides of the issue here. If they're going to create that much revenue and tonnage and production of copper and other commodity metals, possibly, they're going to have to produce a lot more waste.
I have been told and watched over my life, oh, it'll be fine. And it's not. And then whoever the company was, they go, bye-bye, and it's over. And then this beautiful, very, very fragile, very unique environment is ruined forever.
And what are we doing to our environment and to our children and grandchildren? That's my concern. I won't be here.
Evaluations that we have to do with the Forest Service.
Over the last few years, with funding from the Resolution Mine, there's been an ongoing ethno-historic study of the Oak Flat area. In fact, a very large area extending well beyond Oak Flat itself to cover all the potential area that could be affected by the Resolution Mine project. But already, Resolution has been trying to discredit the results of it and saying that Oak Flat is not significant to the Apaches, that it really doesn't have any importance, that it isn't sacred. And yet this flies in the face of every federal law that provides protection for these kinds of things, because we have definitely identified people who have demonstrated that significance through the interviews. So regardless of what they say about the project that they've been funding, it has very specifically shown how important Oak Flat is to the Apaches and to every other tribe in central Arizona, who not only have their own connections to the place, but who support the Apache and their connection to the place.
Is this normal for the U.S. to let a foreign country come in and screw up the land?
Well, what is a foreign company nowadays?
Well, I'm not going over to China or Japan or England or wherever.
Our biggest stockholders are Americans. They are. Look it up.
So where does all this copper go then?
It goes into a market.
This group represents 25% of the copper
that the United States would use. We're right now importing 35% of our copper.
And since this copper is going to be sold on the market by a foreign company, when we want some, we'll be importing it too.
Because of all your neat designs, you got it down and say, that's perfect, it's going to break, and it breaks. Now what? We've got contaminated land forever out here. You got stuff going past that to the Gila River watershed downstream. You people take your toys, you go home to your homes wherever that.
And then at the end of mine life, when they're out of money, they're not producing any revenue anymore. If there are lawsuits, the subsidiary simply files bankruptcy and there's no recourse to the parent company.
Trust in me, just in me.
You see, I kind of wonder why a company would be willing to invest as much as you are on testing in all the various aspects if you are pretty sure that you're going to get a go-ahead.